The relentless thrum-thrum of the locomotive was a heartbeat against the vast, indifferent silence of the Arizona Territory. I'm John, a conductor whose skin felt as weathered as the old train itself, each wrinkle a map of countless miles and silent struggles. The air this afternoon was a tangible thing, thick with the dry mineral scent of sun-baked earth and the metallic tang of coal smoke, hinting at a suffocating heat yet to come. Our train, a long, weary serpent of steel and wood, rattled and swayed, a familiar symphony of groans and creaks that spoke of untold stories and forgotten lives. We were deep in what folks whispered about as Apache country, a name that carried the weight of both legend and visceral dread. My duty, a ritual worn smooth by years, began with a thorough sweep of the passenger cars. Most faces were etched with the same weariness. Gaunt prospectors dreaming of gold, stoic settlers clutching their meager possessions, a scattering of card sharps with too bright eyes. But then, as I paused between cars, I saw her. Tucked into a corner seat, half hidden by a threadbare blanket, was a girl no older than 10, perhaps 11. Her clothes, several sizes too large, hung loosely on her small frame. Her face was smudged with dirt, and her eyes, wide and luminous as polished obsidian, darted around the compartment like a terrified, trapped bird. She was utterly alone. An orphan, the station master had mumbled when he shoved a crumpled ticket into my hand, back in Tucson, muttering something about a distant relative up north. But there was a profound, heartbreaking fragility about her, a vulnerability that pricked at something long dormant and buried deep within me. My gut clenched. This wasn't just another passenger to get from point A to point B. This was a responsibility, a burden, in a land that had no mercy for the weak, no pity for the lost. I just didn't know then how heavy that burden, how deadly it would become. The sun began its slow, deliberate descent, bleeding fiery oranges and bruised purples across the vast canvas of the western sky. The breathtaking beauty of the landscape did nothing to ease the growing knot of tension in my gut. The girl, whose name I learned was Ilara, clung to my side, a silent, fragile shadow as I moved through the cars, checking on passengers, offering reassurances that felt hollow even to my own ears. Her silence was unnerving, broken only by soft, nervous glances that spoke volumes of unspoken fear. Word of an orphan spread quickly through the train, carried on the uneasy breezes that swept through the open windows, and with the word came the whispers, not whispers of sympathy or concern, but of suspicion, of cold, hard judgment. Another mouth to feed, no doubt. A stout rancher, his face burnt raw by the sun, grumbled loudly, spitting tobacco juice onto the tracks during a brief stop near a desolate water tower. Probably a runaway, or worse. He eyed Ilara with a hard, unyielding gaze. The undercurrent of prejudice against Native Americans was a constant simmering heat beneath every conversation. Passengers exchanged grim, exaggerated stories of Indian raids, of stolen livestock, of homesteads burned to the ground. "We're deep in Apache territory now, folks," Captain Miller, the federal marshal on board, announced loudly at one point, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a knife. His hand rested conspicuously on the hilt of his holstered pistol, his eyes sweeping over the worried faces. "Keep your eyes peeled. Don't go wandering off at stops." His words, meant to reassure, only tightened the coil of anxiety in the car, making every rustle of the wind sound like an approaching war party, every distant howl an ominous omen. I tried desperately to keep Ilara out of sight, especially from Miller, whose sharp, perceptive eyes seemed to miss nothing. I shared my own meager rations with her, a dry, brittle biscuit, some tough jerky, watching as she ate slowly, deliberately, as if savoring every crumb. Her small hand, when she took the food, felt incredibly fragile, like a bird's bone. The train rattled. on each mile taking us further from the diminishing lights of civilization, deeper into the dark, shadowed heart of the Apache lands. The light was fading fast now, bleeding out of the sky. Through the grimy window, the ancient mesas cast long, skeletal shadows that stretched across the unforgiving plains, and the vast silence of the desert seemed to press in on us, a heavy, suffocating dread building in the pit of my stomach. I had a bad feeling, a very bad feeling indeed. It wasn't just the approaching darkness. It was a premonition of something far more menacing. The last sliver of the sun, a dying ember, had just vanished below the jagged horizon, plunging the world into that fleeting, eerie twilight when day reluctantly gives way to night. The train's whistle blew, a long, mournful cry that seemed to lament the fading light, cutting through the growing chill in the air. Suddenly, with a violent, jarring lurch, the train screeched to a grinding halt, throwing passengers from their seats and sending loose luggage tumbling. A collective, terrified gasp ripped through the cars, a sound I knew intimately from close. Calls and broken rails. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird desperate for escape. I scrambled to the engineer's cabin, my muscles screaming in protest, pushing past startled passengers. I peered out into the rapidly deepening gloom, my eyes straining to make sense of the sudden, unnatural stillness. What I saw sent a brutal shockwave of ice through my veins. The tracks ahead were blocked, not by fallen rocks or a twisted rail, but by a formidable, silent wall of Apache warriors. They materialized from the deepening shadows of the mesas, appearing as if born from the very earth, their painted faces stark against the fading light, their rifles glinting ominously, catching the last faint glow. They were utterly silent, an unnerving, disciplined presence, their numbers growing by the second, fanning out like a dark tide. Panic, raw and guttural, erupted in the passenger cars. Shouts, screams, the frantic, desperate scramble for firearms that few of these city dwellers knew how to properly wield. "It's an Indian raid!" a woman shrieked, clutching her terrified child to her chest, her voice cracking with hysteria. Captain Miller, his face grim and set, drew his pistol, his eyes narrowed, scanning the menacing figures. I saw the fear, the raw, unreasoning terror in the passengers' eyes. They expected a massacre, a brutal attack for gold, for supplies, for blood. But then an Apache warrior, taller and more imposing than the others, stepped forward. He wore a single, proud eagle feather in his hair, and his voice, though deep and resonant, carried an unnerving, chilling calm that cut through the passengers' panicked cries. He spoke in broken English, his words echoing in the sudden, eerie silence. He pointed not at the train's strongbox, not at any of the armed men, not even at the bewildered engineer. He pointed directly, unequivocally, at the passenger car, where Ilara was still huddled, shivering. "We do not want your gold," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the terrified, bewildered faces. "We want the child." A stunned, absolute silence fell over the train. The passengers, moments ago consumed by a general, all-encompassing terror, now looked at each other with a mixture of confusion, dawning suspicion, and a chilling sense of betrayal. All eyes, now filled with a new, dangerous kind of fear, slowly turned towards the compartment where Ilara was huddled, a tiny, vulnerable figure. The air thickened with unspoken accusations, a palpable shift in the atmosphere, as I felt the cold, hard realization dawn on everyone. The Orphan was the target, and her presence, her very existence, had just put every single one of us in mortal danger. The Apache leader's demand, stark and terrifying, hung heavy in the twilight. A terrifying question mark over the lives of everyone trapped on the train. The passengers, who moments before had been united in their singular fear of a general attack, now turned on Ilara with a chilling, desperate ferocity. "Give them the girl!" someone screamed, the voice shrill with hysteria. "Save us all! She's nothing but trouble." The air filled with a torrent of ugly shouts. "Indian blood! "She's a bad omen. Throw her out." Captain Miller, usually decisive, a man of unshakable resolve, was clearly caught off guard. He looked from Ilara's terrified face to the unmoving Apache warriors outside, his own features a mask of deep conflict, his hand still gripping his pistol. I stepped forward, my body instinctively moving to shield Ilara, placing myself between the frantic, enraged passengers and the terrified child. "Wait!" I yelled, my voice cracking with desperation, trying to cut through the rising tide of fear and anger. "We don't know why they want her. We can't just hand her over without understanding." But the mob, fueled by a primal fear, was relentless. One burly man, his face contorted by prejudice and panic, lunged towards Ilara, his hand reaching for her. I reacted on instinct, tackling him, sending us both sprawling amidst the scattered luggage and terrified screams. A gun went off wildly, the deafening blast echoing in the confined space, lodging a bullet harmlessly in the ceiling. In the sudden, jarring chaos, Ilara whimpered, her small hands clamping over her ears, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. The Apache outside remained utterly still, silent, formidable witnesses to the unfolding drama, their patience, I could feel, wearing perilously thin. Then the Apache leader spoke again, his voice now colder, sharper, cutting through the echoes of the gunshot. "She is of our blood," he declared, his voice resonating with an ancient claim. "She was stolen. We have come for what is ours." He pointed, his gaze unwavering, to a small, intricate beadwork necklace around Ilara's neck that I hadn't noticed before, hidden beneath her tattered shirt. It was a pattern, now that I looked closely, that seemed distinctly Apache, symbols interwoven with a profound cultural meaning. "The mark of the serpent," he pronounced, his voice echoing with conviction. "Our stolen daughter, taken from her cradle." The revelation struck me like a physical blow, a bolt of understanding tearing through the fog of fear. Ilara wasn't just a lost orphan. She was an Apache child, stolen perhaps years ago during a brutal raid or abduction, hidden in plain sight, living a life of quiet desperation among the very people who had taken her. The passengers who had screamed about Indian blood moments before now stared at Ilara with a sickening new understanding, a horrifying realization of the historical injustice they were witnessing. The prejudice was still there, thick and tangible, but now it was laced with a chilling fear of ancient wrongs, of cosmic retribution, and the very real potential for a full-scale war right here, right now. I looked at Ilara, then at the Apache leader, the truth dawning with sickening clarity. This wasn't about a random raid or a simple hostage situation. It was about reclaiming what was lost, about a profound wound in their tribe. And I knew, with a sudden fierce and undeniable certainty, that I couldn't let them hand her over blindly. There was a story here, a truth that needed to be heard, a wrong that demanded to be set right. The weight of the Apache leader's revelation settled heavily on the train, a palpable presence that finally silenced the frantic shouts and accusations. "Stolen, our stolen daughter." The words hung in the chilling twilight, forcing a grim, undeniable truth upon us all. The passengers, though still wary and unnerved, began to quiet, their fear giving way to a grudging, reluctant comprehension. Captain Miller, his face pale and etched with the weight of his own internal struggle, slowly lowered his pistol. His hand trembling slightly, he looked at the intricately beaded necklace around Ilara's neck, then back at the unyielding, resolute Apache leader, a silent, profound understanding passing between them. "How do we know this is true?" Miller finally asked, his voice low, addressing the Apache directly, his tone now devoid of aggression, tinged with a raw vulnerability. The Apache leader stepped forward, his gaze locking onto Ilara's small, upturned face. He began to speak in his native tongue, a rapid, guttural stream of words that flowed with an ancient cadence. Elara, who had been shrinking into herself, slowly, hesitantly, raised her head. A flicker of recognition, a fragile, hesitant spark ignited in her dark eyes. She whispered something, a sound so faint I almost missed it, a child's forgotten word. Then hesitantly she repeated a few words in Apache, words that seemed to bring a profound, agonizing relief to the stoic warriors outside, a collective sigh rippling through their ranks. Tears welled in her eyes, not of fear anymore, but of something akin to a forgotten memory finally resurfacing, a distant echo of home and belonging. Seeing this undeniable connection, this raw, emotional reunion, Captain Miller made his decision. He holstered his gun with a definitive click, his gaze meeting mine, a silent acknowledgement of shared understanding. "She goes with them," he stated, his voice firm, resolute. "But on our terms, safely, no more bloodshed." I walked Elara to the open door of the train car, my heart a complex mix of relief and a strange, aching sadness. Her small hand, no longer trembling, clutched mine tightly. The Apache leader waited, his expression unreadable, yet his eyes held a glimmer of profound gratitude. I knelt before Elara, meeting her gaze, seeing a nascent strength already forming within her. "You'll be safe now, little one," I told her, my voice thick with emotion, a lump forming in my throat. She looked at me, then back at the Apache, and in her eyes I saw not just hope, but a newfound peace, a quiet acceptance of her destiny. She had been found. As the Apache leader gently took Elara's hand, and the warriors melted back into the vast, silent night, a strange, profound quiet descended upon the train. The passengers, shaken and subdued, began to process the enormity of what had transpired. We had been caught in a historical current, a raw, painful glimpse into the long, tragic story of stolen children and broken promises. I felt a profound, irreversible shift within me. The weight of responsibility for Elara had been immense, a suffocating burden, but in facing that fear, in standing up for her, in bearing witness to her truth, I had found a purpose beyond the dusty tracks, beyond my own jaded existence. The train eventually pulled out, its whistle a softer, less mournful sound now, leaving the empty, silent desert behind. The gold was safe, the lives were spared, but something far more precious had been exchanged, a truth revealed, a stolen child returned to her people, and a hardened conductor reminded that even in the unforgiving crucible of the Old West, some battles were fought not with guns, but with empathy, with courage, and with the simple act of choosing what is right. The landscape outside blurred, but the image of Elara, walking into the night with her true family, remained sharply etched. In my mind, a beacon of hope in a world often consumed by shadow.